So welcome. We are very excited to present the first webinar in our Main Street Reimagined project. My name is Tom Griffin. I'm an assistant professor at the Ted Rogers School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, as well as the assistant director of the Institute for Hospitality and Tourism Research. I work at the university and teach and study tourism. We're going to walk you through the handbook, the project that we've just started, and just introduce the key concepts and the key ideas that we're kind of interested in. And we're really looking forward to kind of having a bit of a Q&A, some discussion towards the end of the session. Of course, getting into this call, you must have realized that this call is being recorded, and we will be sharing a recording of this webinar on our website. So just to let you guys know, that's our intentions. And of course, if you guys have any questions as we go, please raise your hand, come off mute, type into the chat box, and we'll go through there. First off, I'd like to just start with a land acknowledgement for the land that Ryerson University is situated. So Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Very briefly, the Institute for Hospitality and Tourism Research, which is the group within which this project sits. So we are part of the university, and our mission is to facilitate and conduct research of both scholarly value and significance to the tourism hospitality field. We mobilize knowledge to enhance the research reputation and impact of Ryerson University, particularly in the tourism and hospitality field. And so what we're really interested in, we are primarily academics, but we have industry experience in different places and at different times. And we really try to conduct that research that meets criteria of both audiences. And a big part of what we're doing as well is to find opportunities for students to participate and engage and get some experience and connect them to the industry as well. So very briefly, our team, I've introduced myself. My main research interests have been visiting friends and relatives, tourism. So that's something I'm very interested in. We have Dr. Walter Jameson, who's going to speak in a few minutes. Walter has a ton of experience with tourism planning, both at the local, regional, national, and international level. Some really great experience and a really huge resource for this project. And then we have Natasha, who's on the call. Natasha's doing her master's, and her work provides a lot of the resource for a large chunk of what we're presenting today. And then Annie, Nathaniel, Lucia, and Wahid have all been students that have worked on the project along the way. And thank you for your time and effort. I know some of you. And Michelle Jameson has been really invaluable in helping put the handbook together in terms of the structure and the format. And without her efforts, this would not have gone as successfully as it has. And so something really important to kind of stress is that we are not here presenting ourselves as Main Street experts. That's not who we are. We are not Main Street experts. We are tourism people, and we are applying what we know to the Main Street situation and the Main Street organizations. And so we're not trying to take over or duplicate what other groups are doing. We think there's some amazing work going on, and we just feel that we have a little bit of a niche in looking at that visitor economy tourism aspect for Main Streets. And so that's really kind of where we see ourselves fitting in. Of course, Walter, jump in if you think I'm missing anything or you want to add anything. So briefly, today's session, we're going to go over a brief summary of the first 3 chapters of our handbook. Walter is going to take the first 2 chapters, and I'm going to talk about the 3rd chapter, which is introducing the visitor economy. Going to just tell you about what's happening next, our next steps as we see them, and then we really would like to have at least 20 minutes at the end of this call just to hear from you. If you have any questions, if there's things you'd like to hear from this project for us to talk about, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Just a quick summary of how we got to today. So actually, before COVID in the spring of 2019, I kind of got interested in business improvement areas and conducted an interview around 30 Toronto BIAs. I know some of you are on this call. It's great. I'm glad you guys are back and we're talking again. So really nice to see you. And then we went through and we conducted a few different projects. After COVID hit, we did a project on the responses of Toronto BIAs to COVID. So we looked at all the websites and their online material and kind of categorized some of those responses. And then since spring 2021, we've been speaking with more Main Street experts across Canada, doing some more literature reviews, and through the work of Natasha predominantly, ended up speaking with around 44 BIAs and BIA-related organizations across Canada. And there's actually a summary report of all of these smaller projects already on our website. And then now we are starting our Main Streets Reimagined project. And this is really the intention is to speak with and provide information for practitioners, people that work with business improvement areas and Main Streets on visitor economy ideas and strategies. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Walter and let him introduce himself and talk about the project.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you, Tom. One of the things that we started off with, and as Tom said, we began to look at this at Main Streets before the pandemic, where we already were seeing situations and challenges that we thought we could contribute to from our particular area of expertise, which is quite clearly the visitor economy and tourism. And so we start off by saying, and this is not our quote, but one from the Main Street program in the United States, that every Main Street either is in the visitor economy or could be in the visitor economy if it so chooses. And we always want to stress that the visitor economy may not be something for every Main Street. Some Main Streets may feel that it's not part of their mandate or they don't have the resources. So whatever we present over the next several weeks will always be on the basis that a Main Street is either considering or has adopted the visitor economy as part of their overall strategy. One of the challenges that we have is that there are very many different types of Main Streets. And one of the things that we'll be trying to do over the next period of time in the material we provide and in the webinars is to recognize that we've got urban and rural, small and large. Some are doing really well, others are declining. Some already have a healthy visitor industry. And we're always then going to be appealing to those Main Streets that are reaching out and interested in how they better can leverage the visitor industry as part of their overall strategy. We could say a lot more about the handbook, but this is really something that the team has developed. And so we chose not to do a textbook or a book that would be oriented towards an academic audience, though that would be something we might consider in the future. But we really were aiming to reach out to people who are actually doing Main Streets. And it's not just Main Street people, but economic development officers, politicians, and others. So we wanted to be user-friendly. We recognize that everyone is busy, and so we try to provide things in a succinct manner and are always available, of course, to expand on anything that we present with you. We see this as a living document, so if you've got case studies or perspectives that you think we're not dealing with or you would like to add to, we certainly encourage that. And so we would like to think as we end the project that it's really one that's been co-created by all of us concerned about our Main Streets. We're quite tactical in the sense that we recognize that Main Street communities are looking for something that they can do fairly easily, that while long-term planning is great, we would like to think that some of the things that we share with you can be implemented on a very near-term basis. One of the things that we'll be doing is, as the material is available, we'll be sharing it with you, and we'll be doing this about every 2 weeks. And so that this is a way of helping out people as they are thinking about the future. Otherwise, we'd be probably looking in the middle of 2022, and we didn't think that was the right thing to do. So we'll share it with you as we have it. And it's going to be converted into an ebook in 2022. But up until then, you'll be getting live information as we develop it. The handbook is really divided into a series of sections. We're dealing with the first three today, but the majority of our time is going to be spent in providing you with glimpses into what we think are important strategies. And we can talk about these more at a later date. As part of the overall process, we'll be bringing together everything in conclusions. And again, this will be part of the ebook, but also shared with everyone who has expressed interest in what we're doing. We're developing case studies, and we reach out if you've got a good case study. We'd love to see it. We'd love to share it with the wider community. And very shortly, we'll be posting resources. And again, we'll ask you if you've got examples of how a Main Street community has been leveraging the visitor economy. Please share it with us, and we'll make sure to share it with the larger group. These are some of the topics that we'll be dealing with in the shorter and longer term. And so just to make you aware that there are about 16 different chapters, if you want to, that we'll be sharing. Some of them that Tom and I will be doing, some of them others will be participating in. We're really excited that, for example, Natasha, one of our graduate students, will be doing a session on partnerships. And so we've tried to identify topics that we think are timely, but if you see things that we're not dealing with, please send Tom or I a note, and we'll make sure to consider whether we have the ability to respond. So the sections, chapters that are coming up. So in 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about how you tell your Main Street story and how do you plan for after 6 on your Main Street, whether you're a small community or an urban community. And subsequent to that, we'll be talking about mapping your Main Street, evaluating what you have from the point of view of the visitor economy. Tom will be talking about visiting friends and relatives. And then, as I've mentioned, we'll do a session on partnerships and measuring impacts, and we'll share with you upcoming chapters and sections very shortly.
Great, thanks, Walter. So hopefully that just kind of gives you an overview of what the project is, the types of things you can expect from the project as we move forward, and what our intentions are with this project. I'm going to talk about the visitor economy, kind of introduce that concept, the idea as we understand it, kind of lay the foundations for the, kind of everything else that moves forward from this project. So, the visitor economy, when we talk about the visitor economy, we really kind of view this as a really kind of broad term that describes the activity and implications of the activity of all visitors to an area. So we're not just talking about tourists. Of course, tourists are visitors, but we're kind of curious about whether we can apply some of those same ideas and philosophies that we see in the tourism world to other types of visitor groups as well. So, when we're talking about visitors, we're really talking about anyone that's from outside of the area who is visiting the area. So it could be a short haul or long haul tourist, a day tripper from the other side of the city, or nearby regional. It could be people coming for festivals or events. It could also be conference attendees. It could be people that are visiting their friends and relatives. It could be students, because although students are not, technically tourists, they behave as visitors in many ways. And we could also talk about commuters that perhaps we can try and convince them to stay after hours, come back at the weekend, and so on. So it's really just anybody from outside the area visiting the area. I just had somebody comment that I'm a bit quiet. Am I still a bit quiet? If that's a problem, please type into the chat. So what are the impacts of visitors? And I'm sure this is not great news to you, but just to be clear about what some of the impacts are. So first of all, we're not here to say that the local market should be ignored. Main streets, your local market is vital and is always going to be a priority. And so we're not suggesting that anybody should totally pivot towards the visitor economy. Absolutely not. But what we do think is that there is opportunity to think about the visitor economy and look at the impacts that it can bring in terms of the economic activity. More people visiting the area bring more money. That helps some businesses stay viable that otherwise might not be able to stay viable. It means more jobs and it means more business opportunities. There's also the cultural vibrancy aspect of visitors. More people coming and participating in events and activities and enjoying the public space brings that vibrancy, which kind of raises the appeal of the place, of the area as a place to live, but also as a place to visit and invest and bring new businesses to. It can also foster local pride. If tourism or visitor economy is done well, it can make local people feel good about the place that they live in. And of course, if the visitors are supporting those businesses that are keeping them viable, then that raises the quality of life for residents too. There are more job opportunities, there are more things to do in their communities, and that's good as well. And of course, when tourists or visitors leave the community after their experience, they tell people about their experience. And so the visitor economy is a great way to raise and to boost the reputation of your area. If people have a good positive experience, they're going to tell their friends and family, they might post online and so on. And that's a really authentic and powerful way to raise the awareness and reputation of the area, which then leads into, making it a more appealing place to live, a more appealing place to work, and somewhere that might bring more investment as well. And so really, again, kind of one of the foundations of this project is, what are those strategic decisions and actions that can increase the benefits of the visitor economy, but also manage the consequences of the visitor economy. So, we're not here as well just saying visitors are great, let's get all visitors all the time as much as possible, because of course there are challenges. And, and through our research, we know that, the classic example is the big festivals that perhaps the BIAs themselves don't have much to do with. And of course, there are some people that benefit from that, but there are also challenges. And so, how can a BIA, a Main Street organization, think about what are the types of visitor activities that we want to promote? So this is kind of the visitor journey, and this is kind of adapted from a few different ideas and models from the tourism literature, but I think it kind of helps lay out the situation and the process of what visitors, of how we're approaching the visitor economy. And so, the first thing to think about is to split it up into those three sections: is the pre-trip, the pre-visit, and then the during the trip, like actually when they're in the place and they're doing something, and then once they leave, what happens after they leave. So, visitors first of all have a motive or a reason of why they want to leave the place where they're at to go somewhere else, and that motive or reason might be to get a haircut, to go to an event or a festival, a number of reasons. But there might be something that says, I want to leave my area and go somewhere else because I need something. I need to fulfill some kind of need. And so once I have that need, I got to figure out what my competitive set is. So if I want my haircut, where could I get my haircut? I could go to my own neighborhood. I could go to the next door neighborhood. I could, whatever it is, I got to, and that changes depending on my need. If I've got something fairly straightforward like a haircut, it's going to be a pretty local competitive set. If I want to have a weekend trip, then that competitive set changes. It's probably a bit further afield, and I'm looking for different needs and different services to meet those needs. Then I need information. So I need to know what places are available to me and what those places offer and what I can expect from those places. Typically comes from friends and family, but also from online reviews, social media activity, and of course, marketing and paid advertising. Then I make my trip, my visit, and I actually have my primary interaction. And so what I mean by this is the interaction with the place or the people that I intended to have that interaction with. So with the particular shop or the particular event or the festival, I'm looking for that interaction with that immediate primary interaction, the service that I'm traveled for. But I also have these secondary interactions because, when I go for my haircut or I go for the festival, I also need to park my car, take transit, get a coffee, walk through the streets and the public spaces. And so those secondary interactions also affect my opinion and my experience of the overall, of the destination, of the area or the main street where I'm visiting. And the combination of that affects my evaluation. So what do I actually now think of this place? Did it meet my needs? Am I satisfied? Am I happy? And that combination. And so this is really important because it might not just, I might go to get my hair cut and have an amazing experience. But if along the way I can't park my car, or the streets are dirty, or I get a coffee and it's terrible, that can also impact my overall evaluation of the area. So thinking about how those bits fit together as a bit of a puzzle is a really important, a challenging but important thing for a BIA type organization to think about. So once I evaluate my experience, I'm then going to think, well, am I going to return? When am I going to go back? What's going to make me want to go back? And what am I going to who am I going to share my experience with? Am I going to share it with my friends and family? I'm going to write a review. Am I going to do something more with that? Because then my experience becomes the information for other people thinking about maybe potentially taking a visit for whatever reason that we're talking about. And so this kind of maps out for us what the visitor journey is. And so when we look at this, for example, let's use an example of somebody that's looking for a music store. This actually came up in one of the interviews that we did for the project. So, this particular main street had a very well-known record store, and they kind of talked about this as being like a central reason one reason of why some people travel to their main street. So, if I'm looking to purchase some music, I might want to go to buy that record, but I might also want that cultural and social connection of being in that place and meeting people and having that space of being in the record store. I'm going to, review my competitive sets. There might be other stores nearby. I don't know how far away they are, but, depending on what's available to me, and I'm also going to evaluate whether I actually want to travel to this place, or do I just want to buy my record online? What's the advantages of doing each? And then I'm going to find information. So I'm going to ask my friends that also buy music. I'm going to go to the record store website. I might look at online reviews and forums and so on. And then I make my decision to actually go to the record store, and I have that interaction with the record store, which of course is really important. But along the way, I'm also parking and taking transit and walking through the streets and buying coffee or whatever it is. And so, again, that affects my evaluation of the whole area. I'm then going to decide, am I going to go return? And if so, when? What's going to provoke me to want to go back? Where am I going to share that information? Am I going to tell my friends? Am I going to go back onto the online forums or whatever it is? And where am I going to share my experience with that? Sylvain, your question, do people share their experience during the visit? Yeah, absolutely. Through social media and so on, that's an added layer to their experience, as they're traveling around and so on, depending on the experience as well. But yes, absolutely, during the visit, they share their evaluation as well. And so for a BIA then, what are the places where you might be able to have an intervention into this journey to kind of increase the positives and manage that visitor experience? Well, maybe it's in the information space. Maybe it's like, is there some information that's lacking? How can I fill those gaps? How can I encourage people sharing good information to share more good information? Within the actual experience itself, are there clusters or packages of experiences that could perhaps be promoted together? So perhaps it's a formal packaging, or perhaps it's a more casual idea of, well, the record store is also close to this clothing store, which is also close to this coffee store, and perhaps together they kind of offer this overall experience, and they could do some cross-marketing and some packaging in that way. Are there any gaps or any weaknesses that perhaps the BIA could help kind of fill to improve the visitor experience? And then finally, after the experience, after the visit, how does the BIA help maintain relationships with the visitor, through perhaps it's social media, showing people, encouraging them to sign up for things and so on, and maintain that relationship, because of course we want people to come back. And how do we encourage them, or perhaps incentivize them, to share some of those positive stories so that they're spreading their experiences on our behalf, which is really authentic and powerful. And so I'm not going to go through this, but this is just like an example of the types of visitors that we might find in a BIA or a main street, and kind of thinking about, well, first of all, who are they? What motivates them? What are they comparing my main street against? Is it a very local competitive set, or is it much broader and wider depending on their needs? Where are they getting their information from, and how can I perhaps play around with filling some of those gaps and persuading people in different ways? What are their primary and secondary interactions, and how do they group together, and how do they cluster? And then how can I encourage them or engage them to share information on my behalf once they've left? So some key questions is to figure out who is already visiting, which groups are already visiting your main streets, and what are the economic gains that they're bringing, and which groups are bringing gains that are consistent with community values that you want to promote and you want to be part of. Because again, not all visitor groups are going to have positive impacts for everybody, but something to think about. And also some groups are also going to be more able to influence more people. And so also identifying those groups that have the loudest voices and amplified their experiences is also an intriguing idea as well. And then what can we do to encourage them to do more while they're visiting, to return soon and more frequently, and to share those positive experiences? And I think something that came up in Natasha's work during COVID is that some main streets have seen a decline in some visitor groups, but they've also seen an increase in other visitor groups. And so how do you maintain those relationships with those people that perhaps revisited you for the first time in a while, or came to visit your main street for the first time because their competitive set was very limited? And how do you maintain and build those relationships? And then also, what's the visitor product that's on offer? So think about what is in your community that might appeal to people. And sometimes this isn't straightforward and obvious. This is, I love sharing this with my students in class. This is the zebra crossing at Abbey Road in London. It's a very pleasant neighborhood, but there's not a lot to do there for visitors. But lots of people will travel to this zebra crossing just to walk across. And so this has impacts, but it has potential to kind of draw people here. And perhaps we don't all have Abbey Roads in our main streets, but what is it that might appeal to some people? This is a new initiative that the Ontario Tourism, the government Ontario Tourism arm has kind of supported, and it's Netflix in your neighborhood. And so you can actually go and see, of all the Netflix shows that have filmed in Canada, where are they filmed? And so perhaps again your main street doesn't have one of these places in it, but if it does, this is kind of an example of those intriguing ways that reasons why people might travel to a destination. I love sharing this with my students. In Korea, this is the toilet park. And so this town, Suwon in South Korea, trying to figure out what it is that's special about their destination, about their area. And they are the home to Mr. Toilet, who founded the whole sewage system in South Korea and is kind of, did a lot of good for the work. And so they've really played into that and built this toilet museum that talks about toilet culture. And it's just, what is distinct and special about your main street that can be that story and that hook to show people something different and distinct to the competitive sets. So some strategic questions that I think are interesting to ask are, not just looking at your main street as that primary attraction, as that primary interaction, but also your main street as a secondary interaction to a bigger trip. Who is traveling to places nearby you, and how could your main street be a secondary attraction to those people? Also, what are the tourism organizations doing? What are your municipal and provincial tourism organizations doing, and how can you replicate that and tap into what they're doing as well? And we'll cover that in another session in this project. And so in summary, is we truly believe and we feel that the visitor economy can, if it's managed well, bring more economic activity to your main streets, that it can increase that cultural vibrancy and can raise awareness and reputation of your area. And that as a BIA, there might be some interventions, whether they're small or large, that can really kind of persuade and trigger visitor activity to benefit your area as much as possible. So, just to kind of finish that off is, what do we see our role here? And so, we really just want to help as best we can. We are a university, so we're not a consultancy, but, that comes with advantages and disadvantages. But we're here to, we want to share ideas. We hope that this webinar series becomes a bit of a discussion space. So our intention is we'll talk for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll have 20 to 30 minutes. We'd love to hear from you guys about examples and so on. I'd like to hear from you about the topics that you might like to hear from us about. And if anybody is interested in sharing or being part of a webinar to share experiences and best practices, we would absolutely love to hear from you. And within your own main streets and your own BIAs, if you want to talk to us about ideas that you have, or if you want us to work on some strategies, if you want us to conduct research, or if you just want to find some students, we have a great pool of students that are really interested in working in tourism broadly related topics, and BIAs and Main Streets would be a really great place for our students to get some experience and work for you guys. And those are our emails. So what's coming next? Well, our next webinar is going to be in 2 weeks, and Walter is going to lead those on storytelling. So how do we get communities to tell their stories? And also, how can we look at the nighttime economy after 6? So, for the remainder of the time, I know I've missed the chat going on. That's great that there's some lively chat. But we would just like to hear from you guys. Do you have any questions for us? Does this speak to you guys? Is there something that's missing? And just really like to open up some questions and discussion. Thank you. And Walter, if you have anything to add too.
No, you did a great job, Tom. I just wanted to stress the fact that we use the word visitor as opposed to tourist with a great deal of consideration. And for example, if you're in a somewhat larger city, you may have a number of main streets, BIAs. And so if I live in one BIA or main street and go to the one next door or across the city, I'm a visitor. And so we have this broad definition. In other words, it's people that you're attracting into your main street area that normally would not do so on a regular basis. So we've got this very broad definition of Main Street. I've been looking at the comments, Tom, and there are some really good questions. One important area that we're looking at is how to measure the impact of the visitor economy. And we'll be producing a chapter and a webinar on that. And we've already had very good discussions with Kay from the Ontario BIAs. And I think that's going to be an important one. But if anyone has any ideas about BIA and impact, please let us know.
I'm going to respond to Judy's question there. Yeah, it's a soft definition. We're not using for the time being in this discussion, we're not using a hard definition. We're just really looking at people that are coming from one area to outside, one area from outside of the main street into that main street. Of course, when we get into measuring impacts, that might change. We'll have to come up with some definitions, but right now. Yeah, Martin, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, excellent, thank you. I just wanted to explain what I was asking in the chat there. I got a long-winded chat going through there, but and I hope that this project is going to address that, or at least give us a few ideas. I work in rural tourism consultant in that area for years now, but what I've often seen is it's not necessarily business ideas that are coming and coming in, is the actual perception of risk, as much within the municipality and the community, and also within the just the insurance business and the workforce. There's a pileup of issues on a business who wants to create a new experience or unique experience that they have to address. Is that something that you'll be looking at within this project? Well, to understand these are all the issues that you'll probably sit or hit, or be trying to find the right word here, but be approached by, and all these issues around insurability, construction permits, building, workforce. These are the places where you should be looking at. I'm saying this because in experience, a lot of our smaller municipalities do not have that wherewithal, the knowledge and the expertise within their own group and their own teams to actually address these things. These are all unique ideas or unique issues that they have never experienced. And again, from experience, it's very hard to find who do I talk to, how, as a business, how do I get this project on the road and remove these barriers? Is that something that's going to be addressed within this project, or?
It should be now. If we weren't going to do it, Martin, we will do it. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Martin and his part of the Culinary Alliance and they have good experience in culinary related experiences. So, Martin, maybe we can have a discussion with you later, and maybe you can even help us to put together something that would be useful to the larger audience. Thank you for that.
And my add-on to that is that, you know, through the interviews that we did, there were some excellent examples of different BIAs that had dealt with and, you know, faced some of those challenges. And so my immediate response is we can invite some of those people to come and perhaps give a presentation and a case study. And, you know, our intention is not just for this to be me and Walter standing here sharing the information, but to provide that space for interaction about these types of topics. So we'll definitely take a note of that, and we can invite some of those people. I mean, the ones that came to immediate mind was London, not London, sorry, Stratford. Forgive me, Stratford was doing a lot of, seemed to be doing a lot of great work relating to those types of issues. And I'm sure between Natasha and Walter, we can go and invite some other people as well. But that could be a really good topic. Thank you for the feedback.
This is Kathy here.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Good. I couldn't find my hand to put up.
That's all right.
I was thinking about some of the barriers that some of the BIAs encounter. It depends on what the projects are that they're considering, of course. But I think that one of the things that we're looking for, or we should be looking for, is to impact our elected officials in a way that, align yourselves if possible, or vote them into office. Those people who are brave enough to, upset the status quo. Because without their support, the best ideas often get knocked down. And of course, I'm speaking about my own council. But I don't know what it's like in other municipalities, but it's extremely difficult to get to move the peanut up the hill, with some of our officials. So I'm just putting it out there. It's not something that would necessarily go in a handbook, but that is a potential barrier.
Yeah, one of the Kathy, one of the audiences that we have and will need help in ensuring that we're successful in doing this is to provide material for Main Street stakeholders to talk to elected officials. And I think the section that we'll be doing on impact is particularly important, to be able to demonstrate that well-conceived, well-managed, well-presented visitor experiences can have significant impacts on the community. So I think our task is to work with people like you to determine what kind of information you would need in order to make the case. And so our impact section is very much designed to do that. And we've noted your interest, Kathy, and we'll get back to you to work with us on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
And Kay, I saw your question. Do you want to just ask that question or raise that issue?
Just raising it.
Sorry, yeah. Kay.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right, Kathy. Thanks.
No, not necessarily. It just, the one of the million things I hear from BIAs, it is that challenge with getting that engagement with from the BIA's point of view to the different businesses, and then the engagement between the businesses. So I think, a part of a toolkit needs to really have that information on it. How do we all get rowing or paddling in the same direction?
Yeah, it's a great topic too.
Kay, I think it's important that this is one area where Martin and the Culinary Alliance can help, because they've been doing that. So I think if we can share that experience, Martin, that on the projects that you've been working on, that would be useful.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think there's, and just to let you know, I'm not with the CTA anymore, the Culinary Tourism Alliance, but I did work for a year and a half with them on many projects. But now I'm definitely within rural tourism in Main Street, across Ontario and Canada. So if I can lend a hand, absolutely.
Yeah, and my thought goes straight to some examples that we heard about in the research of people that did some really interesting things. And I think it was somebody in Winnipeg, I forget which BIA, maybe Natasha, you can remember, but they worked together to build a cycle path network. And that was a really good example. So perhaps we can, these topics are really interesting, that these are the kind of top of mind, and perhaps we need to go back and find some great examples and work with those BIAs to perhaps present a discussion webinar like this on some of those topics. That might be a good approach to take. Sylvain, so your question about the will we use product or experience? I'd be curious to know your views on why one might be better than the other. I mean, product to me is really more about the kind of tangible aspect of the place, and the experience is the kind of combination and the intangible feeling of what the visitor has in that place.
I agree with you about that, but many of those store owners, they see only, okay, I'm selling a coffee, I'm not selling an experience. And I think that's when you're stressing the fact about having Main Street more cheering, sorry, my English is awful this morning, as Main Street interesting, you have to also tell the people at the coffee shop or at the store that people will have a good experience. Even if it's buying a coffee, it's an experience. Going to a store and have a good service and have a decor and so on. I think it's important in the vocabulary to use experience. And people will more, I think, because it's my experience here in Quebec, that business people relate more in the tourism industry to experience than products. That's maybe something because of the French language here in Quebec, but that's a question I have with you to just be. That's the problem I have here in Quebec with my students. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Quebec, and we always talk about product. No, it's not the product. You're not selling a product. You are selling an experience. So I think it's important when we are preparing those kind of handbooks or anything that mention that it's an experience we are offering, as in tourism sector and on Main Street. So that's why my comment was about that.
Yeah, point well taken. And I think using the idea of experience rather than product is also a way to help encourage individual businesses to understand their connections to each other, in terms of, like if the one coffee shop does badly, that can affect, the reputation of the whole Main Street, right? And so working together to understand the value of doing that well is an important idea.
And his coffee can be the best in town, but if the service is bad, you scrap the whole experience.
Yeah. We will be having, so one of our colleagues, Dr. Frederick Demonge, will be preparing a handbook chapter and webinar on customer service. So that's absolutely something that we've thought about. Points well taken. I've taken a couple of notes from you there. Thank you. So, I see somebody sent a private message that since COVID has started, that the issue of social issues on the street, people experiencing homelessness, mental health issues, and so on, is important, and is having an impact on the visitor experience. Of course, there are many other implications of that as well, but that's something to consider too, about a topic to look at. And again, my reaction is there were some great examples of some BIAs doing some really good work, and so maybe we can, Downtown Young is one of them. I know we've seen some people from Downtown Young here, so maybe that's a topic to look at as well. Thank you for that message. I'm just looking through the comments. If anyone has any questions or comments, please, bring yourself off mute. some good discussion about the experience versus product. Yeah, and it's, Judy, point well taken. What the brick and mortar can offer in terms of an experience versus the online, right? Like, and then how to take advantage of that opportunity and really push that experience so it becomes, it convinces people to actually go to the real place rather than the online place. That's, and that's part of this conversation, absolutely.
Yeah, one really good discussion. I mean, one of the things that we know is that a lot of what we deal with in the visitor industry are the intangibles. That while physical things are things that we better understand, but what are those intangibles? Like Sylvain was saying, that the nature of the service exchange, the feeling of the community, how open it is it visitor friendly? And so when we look at assessing a community from the point of view of the visitor economy, those intangibles are important, and we'll be discussing that very shortly in one of our sessions. So thanks everyone for bringing that up, because that intangible element is really important.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments about today's presentation, or about things that you'd like to see from the project moving forward, or any ideas for us? Natasha, did we miss anything?
No, I think it's going great.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Walter, did you want to wrap up? Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I think this is better than we could have hoped for in terms of feedback. It really gives us a sense of what are the important issues that you're facing, some of those. And so we'll be back at you, and individually and collectively, to help us to develop material that's user-friendly and immediately implementable for your particular Main Street. So thanks for everyone for their participation, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll send a follow-up with a couple of links. Yes, this meeting is being recorded, and we will share it on our website. So I'll make sure that the links get out there. And if you want to keep up to date, I really encourage you to go to our website and sign up for the newsletter. Follow us on social media, and we will annoy you that way and let you know what's going on. All right? Great. Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
If anyone does want to stick around and talk separately, absolutely welcome to. Otherwise, thanks so much for your time. It's been a great start. Thank you.